Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope everyone is having a blessed morning. Yes, I wanted to start actually by saying thank you to everyone um, who were sending prayers my way. I was feeling pretty low. I mean, I kind of have. I've been having this like heavy feeling this past week, and just an overwhelming um, sense of pressure, I guess, to handle everything, on my own. And I just needed a minute. I just needed to pause and like realize that it isn't something that I can do on my own, and that I am weak, and that I need to rely on God's strength to bring me through. So I thank you all for your prayers and everything. It's a day by day process. Just have to get through it one day at a time. Not worry about you know next week or next month or what's going to happen in the next couple of days. Just to take it you know one day at a time. So again, thank you for your prayers, and I'm truly blessed to be able to speak to God's people in this way. I thank God every day for being able to speak to you all. And one thing I also want to point out is that I know a lot of people, you know, are thanking me, but really it's just God. I know is working through me. I feel working through me, and I would not be here doing this if He had not called me to do this. So I again thank you all for being so supportive, um, and understand that the Lord has led me here. So I can only thank Him for everything. So today I wanted to read from Matthew verse 7. I'm going to be kind of hopping around this one. There are parts that I've read in previous live streams, but this one, this the theme of today is understanding why it's so important to refrain from judging others. And this was actually a suggestion, and I wanted to tie in a couple of other chapters, a couple of other verses from other chapters, other gospels that really hone in on this specific topic. So I'm going to start off with Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. And as I normally do this, I'll read parts of it and then give my interpretation of the verses that were read. So this is again Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. I'm starting. Stop judging that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you are judging, you will be judged. And with the measure that you are measuring out, they will measure out to you. Why then do you look at the straw in your brother's eye, but do not notice the rafter in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, allow me to remove the straw from your eye, when look, a rafter is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the rafter from your own eye, and then you will see clearly how to remove the straw from your brother's eye. Now, off the bat, I feel the question that needs to be asked just from verse 3. It says, why then do you look at the straw in your brother's eye, but do not notice the rafter in your own eye? It's saying us being human beings, we're not perfect, and we weren't made to be perfect. Clearly we have infirmities and weaknesses and flaws. Everyone does, right? So the question is, who are you? What I feel is this saying is, who are you to judge someone when you yourself has infirmities, has weaknesses, has flaws? Sometimes we will notice something about our friend, a family member, a partner, will notice something about them, an insecurity or a weakness in them, without even noticing the weakness and flaws in ourselves. So this is saying you can't, there's no way to look at someone and say fix your flaw, fix your infirmity, without looking at yourself first and putting yourself in check first. And I believe that's what verse 4 is saying. It says, or how can you say to your brother, allow me to remove the straw from your own eye, when look, a rafter is in your own eye? And so I feel this is saying you need to help yourself. You need to help yourself in the sense that you allow God to transform you, allow God to you know remove that flaw, or allow you to get through that weakness that you have, so that you can then help others get to that point. In that sense, help others to God, because God is what will bring us out of this flaw, out of these weaknesses. Because when we're weak, God is strong. That is where He is most present in our life, when we are weak. So that, I believe, is what's being said in this portion. Now I'm going to continue on with 7 verse 6. So this is Matthew 7 verse 6 to anyone who is joining now. Do not give what is holy to dogs, nor throw your pearls before swine, so that they may never trample them under their feet and turn around and rip you open. So I feel this verse specifically is talking a lot about discernment. Um, or this speaks to praying for discernment in the way that, those who are wicked, or possessed by evil spirits, by monitoring spirits, the enemy. It's really important to not let them access you. And this goes into what I've talked about before in terms of watching the company you keep. You really need to be able to discern correctly about who it is that you are keeping around you. It's really powerful, because you can you never know what somebody's intentions are. You can think that you have such a good relationship with somebody, and then 5 minutes later they turn around after they're not with you and they say all this stuff about you. I've actually witnessed this the other day. I was in the library at my school, and there are these two girls sitting at this table, and their friend was standing up like in front of them, and it looked like he was on his phone or something. And he's standing there, and then as he's walking out, I was like walking to go to the bathroom, and they say, oh, bye, they wave bye to him. And the minute he turns his back, they start like whispering, and I think I heard something along the lines of, oh, he thinks he's so all, like, he thinks he's all that, or something like that. And they started snickering and laughing, and I just thought it was like, it's just crazy. Like, you can think again that, like, people that you've talked to all the time, you laugh with, that they're your friends, that they have your back, when in reality you have no idea what they're saying behind your back. So it is so important to ask and pray for discernment, and to watch the company that you keep. So yeah, do not give what is holy to dogs, nor throw your pearls before swine. Don't give so much of yourself to people that will just take it for granted, who will take advantage of you. And that's something I believe I learned a lot about myself recently. Just being too giving, and too, um, you know, too much of myself, giving too much of myself, to the point where it hurts me in the end. When I think I'm doing something to help others, it's actually hurting me. I think something that um, I'd heard of, the phrase, you'll light yourself on fire in order to keep other people warm. And that shouldn't be the case, especially when it's from or towards people who are just going to turn around and hurt you and not even care about it either. So yeah, it's really important to pray and ask for discernment from God. So this next part here, this part I've read about, keep on asking and it will be given to you. This is Matthew 7:7. Keep on asking and it will be given to you. Keep on seeking and you will find it. Keep on knocking and it will be open to you. For everyone asking receives, everyone seeking finds, and to everyone knocking it will be opened. So this has been talked about before. Be persistent in prayer. Continue to pray. It can't be said enough. You really cannot give up on prayer when it's in accordance to God's will. So even if you are having a hard time with, being able to distinguish, well, are these people that I'm hanging around with, are they, do they have good intentions for me? Continue to ask God for discernment so that you can find that out. So the sooner, the better, so that you're able to watch the company that you keep. So I'm going to skip over to, let's see. I actually wanted to read from Luke 18, chapter 18, because it is in alignment with judgment. And I had a few notes on that. Now I'm going to be switching from a variation of the English Standard Version to the King James Version. Now I believe this was, let's see. Or might be actually. There's another verse now that I have it open before I read from Luke 18. This is from John chapter 8. This is Jesus forgiving an adulterous woman. And I'm going to just read from the beginning to the part where I believe is very relevant to this topic. So it says, this is again John chapter 8, verse 1, I'm reading from in the King James Version. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might not have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself, and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down, and wrote on the ground. In which they heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman was standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself, and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man commended thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Now, this I've talked about before in a previous video, and I believe that this is important when it comes to judging people and judging others. It says this in that very verse, I believe the specific verse, where Jesus himself says, He that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her, knowing that all of these men have sinned before. This is verse 7 of John 8. And then in verse 9, it says, being convicted by their own conscience. They know that they have sinned before. So what right do they have to judge this woman who has also sinned when everyone has sinned? That is the reason why Jesus is here in the first place. And this is also, I wrote a note down here that when you think about Jesus's character, God's character, a man that's never sinned, he's the literal son of God, right? When you think about the miracles that he had done, in this very case, this adulterous woman, committing adultery is a sin. Tax collectors, people who have stolen, who have murdered, all of these things are sins. Yet Jesus is here to to not judge them, but to save them. He literally says this in John 12, verse 47. If anyone hears my words and does not believe, I do not judge him, for I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. And so this just speaks so much to not only Jesus's character, but God himself. At the end of the day, it says it in the Bible as well that we, his disciples, should resemble Jesus. We should be like Jesus. And Jesus did not judge people. People who have sinned, he did not judge them. Just in that verse, talking about Jesus saying, what he was comparing himself to a doctor. He doesn't come to heal healthy, but the sick. This is exactly that, in line with that. And at the end of the day, there's only one true judge, and that's God. The only one. Our Heavenly Father is the one who judges at the end of the day, the very last day. So what are you to gain by judging somebody else? Now, I'll tell you something that I've heard, something that I've learned is usually judgment often stems from envy and jealousy. Somebody who feels that it's coming from a feeling of lack or desire for something that somebody else has that they don't have. Now, in this situation, they're talking about an adulterous woman. There's also judgment comes from feeling like you're high and mighty and you're better than somebody else, which actually aligns very well with the parable from Luke 18, which I'll read now. So this is Luke chapter 18, verse 9. Verse 9 is where I'm starting. Then Jesus told the story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. Two men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer: I thank you, God, that I am not like the other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give you a tenth of my income. But the tax collector stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his chest in sorrow, saying, "Oh God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner." I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So this is saying, don't be like the Pharisee. Don't make yourself out to be this high and mighty person, and just to look down and judge others because you feel that you're holy, because you fast twice a week, because you aren't like sinners, tax collectors, adulterers. But as I said in the beginning, every single person has sinned, has or will sin in their life. So you cannot have this position as if you are this perfect person. And even so, like I said, even Jesus himself, who has never sinned, the only person who has never sinned, only man walking on this earth, who has never sinned, didn't judge people. So what gives us the right to judge other people when we ourselves are flawed and have sinned before? So that, I believe, all of these tie in together. And going further, like I was saying before, judgment can either stem from envy or jealousy of having a sense of a feeling of lack, desiring something that somebody else wants, or it can stem from feeling like you're better than everybody else when in reality you're not. You can't have that position when you're not humbled, when you think you can rely on your own righteousness, on your own goodness in yourself, that never works out. And I believe this is talked about more in this chapter. But we're a little bit ways from there. I'm going to continue now, going back to Matthew chapter 7. I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. Okay. So this is Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. All things, therefore, that you want men to do to you, you also must do to them. This, in fact, is what the law and the prophets mean. So this portion is really saying, treat people how you want to be treated. More so, treat people how God treats you, how he is loving, how he is caring towards you. Even though we can't fully rely on man, we can still give love to those who are in need of it. Giving love to those who are feeling weak, guiding them to God. That is the will of God. This is the law and the prophets mean, it says. So I believe that verse is really, it's just saying treat people how you want to be treated. And even if you don't get anything in return, that's not what it's for. That's not what it's about. You're not seeking validation from other people. You're simply doing this because it is in God's will. It is what God has done for us. We don't deserve his love at all because we've sinned, because we've done and continue to do things that make us flawed, but God still continues to love us. So all the more reason to do that to other people, to forgive other people when they've persecuted against us, to love those who love people who have persecuted against us, to understand, to be more like Jesus. So I'm going to continue on. This is now Matthew 7:13. Going through the narrow gate, because broad is the gate and spacious is the road leading off into destruction, and many are going in through it, whereas narrow is the gate and cramped the road leading off into life, and few are finding it. Be on the watch for the false prophets, who come to you in sheep's covering, but inside they are ravenous wolves. By their fruits you will recognize them. Never do people gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles, do they? Excuse me. Likewise, every good tree produces fine fruit, but every rotten tree produces worthless fruit. A good tree cannot bear worthless fruit, nor can a rotten tree produce fine fruit. Every tree not producing fine fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Really then, by their fruits you will recognize those men. Now, and then this next portion, I'm gonna keep reading and then give my interpretation on this. So now this is Matthew 7, verse 21. Not everyone saying to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of the heavens, but only the one doing the will of my Father who is in the heavens will. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and expel demons in your name and perform many powerful works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. Therefore, everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does them will be like a discreet man who built his house on the rock. And the rain poured down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and lashed against that house, and did not cave in, for it had been founded on the rock. Furthermore, everyone hearing these sayings of mine and not doing them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain poured down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and struck against that house, and it caved in, and its collapse was great. When Jesus finished these sayings, the effect was that the crowds were astounded at his way of teaching, for he was teaching them as a person having authority and not as their scribes. So that's the end of Matthew chapter 7. Now going back a little bit to verse 15, it says, be on the watch for false prophets who come to you in sheep's covering. Now, I feel that people may try and argue, okay, well, wouldn't you be judging somebody based on, when it comes to false prophecy. And I think there's a very big and important difference between worldly judgment, our own judgment coming from our own thinking, and God's discernment. Because God's discernment is being able, yes, to judge well between good and evil. But when it comes to worldly judgment, that's something that stems from envy and from jealousy, or from feeling from our own righteousness. And that is the two distinctions between them. God's discernment is from God, him telling you, when you ask and pray for God's discernment, he will tell you, because he is the one judge, he will be able to judge them and say, this is not what you should be following. This is not what you should be listening to. But when it comes from our own perspective, when it comes from our own thinking, or even from the enemy's thinking, when you bring in the envy and the jealousy in your own righteous, your own person, that's when it becomes judgment that is not honoring God. So understanding the differences between those two are very important, I feel. And that's what's that's what I took away from this portion. And then when we go down to verse 21, Matthew 7:21, it says, not everyone saying to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of the heavens, but only the one doing the will of my Father who is in the heavens will. Many of you will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and expel demons in your name, and perform many powerful works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. Now, this portion, I feel, also ties into the judgment portion of it as well. When you think about the Pharisee, for example, in that parable, the Pharisee and the tax collector, when you're working out of your own righteousness, your own gain of something, that's not honoring God. When you're envious, when you're jealous, when you're bitter towards other people, when you're quick to anger towards other people, these are not the works of God. This is not what God has implanted in us, but God is the opposite of that. He's loving and caring and patient, and that's how we should be in our lives. So people who are saying, just because you're saying, oh yeah, I'm righteous and I'm holy because I fast twice a week, but I'm not like these other people, I'm going to continue to judge them, I'm going to continue to look down at them. That's not who God is. That's not who Jesus was as in when he came to teach these things. So you have to understand that even though you may pray and you read God's word, it means nothing if you don't actually apply it to your life, if you don't actually abide by it and carry it out through your life. And it's regardless of how other people react to you either. Simple example, and this has happened to me so many times before, opening the door for somebody and them not saying thank you. I still do it. I still continue to do it to this day because it's the right thing to do. If there's somebody behind me, I'm going to open the door for them. I'm going to keep the door open. And if they say thank you, I say, you're welcome. If they don't, then oh well, like it's something that is right and is just. And I'm going to continue to do it because I'm not going to be bitter about it. Some people might say, oh, I held the door for this person, and now because they didn't say thank you, I'm going to be bitter. I'm not going to hold the door for anyone anymore. This is a simple example, but it ties into understanding God's character and wanting to be caring and loving and patient towards everyone, not just for personal gain, seeking personal validation, because that's not what it's about. So that's my interpretation of that part. And then finally, something I touched upon in one of my live streams, I'm not sure which one. This is verse 24. It says, therefore, everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does them will be like a discreet man who built his house on the rock, which is God. And the rain poured down, the floods came, and the winds blew and lashed against that house, but it did not cave in, for it had been founded on the rock. Furthermore, everyone hearing these sayings of mine and not doing them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain poured down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and struck against that house, and it caved in, and its collapse was great. Now those who have the foundation of God, they cannot be moved. You cannot be moved, and this especially comes from when people try. I feel this talks about and can be applied to when people talk wrongly about you and try and persecute you and judge you, because they can judge you all you want, but you can simply say that, yeah, okay, that's fine, but I know that you are not the judge, you are not the one true judge, so your words have no effect on me. And that's it, because your foundation is God. It is in God. You know that God is the one and only judge. So their words are, when they try and come at you, they pour down, the floods come and the winds blow, and all these things, all these accusations are against you. You know that, well, at the end of the day, God is the one and true God. So I don't have to listen to what you're saying. I'm not going to heed what you're saying to me, because it has no substance, because God knows me and he is the judge. So at the end of the day, your words have no effect on me. I feel this also just ties into, in general, when you're going through rough times, all the storms, there's all these things coming at you in different directions. But if your foundation, if your faith and trust is in God, cannot be said anymore. I mean, I can't stress it enough. When your faith and trust is in God, you can't be shaken, you can't be moved. So that is my interpretation of Matthew verse 7. I believe more so the only part that I had left out was a part that I did talk about in a previous live stream. This is verse 9. It says, "Indeed, which one of you, if his son asks for bread, will hand him a stone, or will he ask for a fish? He will not hand him a serpent, will he? Therefore, if you, although being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more so will your Father who is in the heavens, give good things to those asking to him." So again, us being sinners as we are, we have made mistakes, we're flawed. And I had said previously, if doesn't have to be you don't have to be a parent, but even like a friend, if somebody is asking something of you, being their friend or even being their parent, that type of relationship, you want to give them the best. So imagine how much more our Father in heaven will provide for us when we seek him, when we have faith and trust in him. So that pretty much wraps up Matthew verse 7, along with, I talked from John for chapter 8 and Luke chapter 18. I'll have to put that in the description box. Those were the ones that I took from today. But yeah, that was all that I had for today. I thank you all for tuning in, and I am planning on doing this again, most likely at the scheduled time. Usually this one was a little bit later. I had to run some errands and take care of some things. So tomorrow it will be at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Other than that, let's see. Let's read chat. Yeah. It's tomorrow. It'll be, so yes, this is January 28th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I'll make an announcement about it as well. But thank you all again. Thank you for the prayers. I am feeling better. It's always a good way to start your day, talking about the Lord and being able to share his message. So I pray that everyone stays well. I pray that the presence of the Lord is with you today. Thank you, and God bless. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.